Hi everyone, welcome back. This is Miri, and today I just wanted to pop in real quick to do a short video talking about the occupational adaptation theory. And this video is really inspired by one of the questions I received last week by one of our members who found herself confused and frustrated with all the different frames of reference and theories and models of practice, and it really reminded me of a time when I was preparing for the board and found myself just as confused. But I really like the occupational adaptation theory, and I think this has a really big place in practice for occupational therapy practitioners and how we approach our treatment sessions. So I think this is an important one to know. It's a meaningful one, and one that allows us to really use a top-down occupation-based model that is holistic and client-centered. So I don't want you to approach this subject with so much dread or just as another thing to learn, but to really understand and conceptualize this theory. Now, I'm not going to go over every component of this theory, and I'm not going to break it down the way I do with other frames of reference. Today's video and the intent is for me to actually just talk about it using layman's terms to help you get a feel and understanding of what this theory is about, because really when we talk about it, this theory is not very difficult to conceptualize. In fact, it's a normative process, it's a lifelong process, and it's something that you and I do every day, and it really is sort of common sense. But I think all of that gets lost in writing and when we try to study and to try to memorize each piece and break it apart in components. So we're just going to talk about it today. And I want to encourage you to check the articles that I put in the video description. These are links to the articles that I found to be very informative and helpful in conceptualizing this theory. Now let's start with a brief background. The occupational adaptation theory was developed in 1992, so fairly new. It's not as old as some of the other theories that exist in our profession. And it was developed at the Texas Women's University by Skate and Schultz. And it was really a response or a reaction to more of a traditional or reductionistic medical model, more of the bottom-up approach to say, hey, let's think of an approach that is more top-down, holistic, client-centered, and occupation-based. So more of a reaction to a traditional approach to say, we want to stay true to the philosophy and core beliefs and values of occupational therapy. And the crux of this theory really comes down to the internal adaptation process. So contrary to what you might think or what you might initially assume when you first hear the word occupational adaptation, you're probably thinking, how are we going to adapt the task or how are we going to adapt the tool? But contrary to that assumption that I know many of us make, the occupational adaptation theory is looking at an internal phenomena. It's an internal adaptation process that we are trying to improve, because we believe that when, or the theory, according to the theory, when there is an improved internal adaptation process, there will be an improved functional outcome and engagement in occupations. And so a treatment goal may not necessarily focus on that measurable, readily tangible functional outcome or remediation of a physical deficit. Rather, it'll be focused on more of what is happening internally with a client and using activities and occupations during treatment to give opportunities for that client to improve the internal adaptation process. And this is a normative, lifelong process, something that all of us do. And isn't that true? When we talk about attributes that are important for success, don't we often say being adaptive, right? And if you cannot respond to an unforeseen or unwelcome circumstances and you become maladaptive and you can no longer have the capacity to adapt, wouldn't you say that that affects your performance? It does. And so this theory is looking at our internal adaptive process and using occupation as a means to provide opportunities to improve that adaptive response so that you can have improved functioning and occupational performance and a greater sense of mastery over your environment. Okay, now there are three basic elements to this theory. There's the person, which includes the sensory motor, cognitive, and psychosocial components. And then there's the environment, and this includes play and leisure, self-care areas, as well as our work. And the third element is the interaction between those two, which results in occupation. Now, there are things that are constantly influencing the person and the environment and the interaction, and those constants are these two. For the person, the constant that is influencing the person is an intrinsic desire of the human being to want to gain mastery, the desire, intrinsic desire to have mastery. And wouldn't you say that you have that too? All of us have within us this instinctive, this primitive, this intrinsic desire to have mastery over things that we want to do. Another constant is over the environment, our second element. The environment demands mastery over our environment. Okay, so there is the demand that is being made for mastery from our environment, and there is an internal intrinsic desire to have that mastery. And together, in the occupational adaptation model or theory, there is a press for mastery. Okay? So those are the three basic elements. Now, you might wonder, how is it in this very medical-driven model, when we are always having to look at like tangible outcomes and functional outcomes, how can we get away with working on something that doesn't seem so obvious, like an internal process? How do we observe or even measure that? Well, there are three predictable outcomes that can be observed when there is a change in our internal adaptation process. For one, there will be improvement in self-initiation in the task that we want to do. Two, there will be generalization. And three, there will be improvement in relative mastery. And we say relative because our sense of how effective or efficient we are is actually relative. It's our own perception and reflection of our own occupational well-being and our perception of the experience we have within the occupation. Hence, it's a relative mastery. So there are predictable outcomes that can be observed when there is a change in our adaptive response. So according to this occupational adaptation theory, the treatment goal would not necessarily focus on a specific functional task or a functional outcome. Rather, it would be looking at the client and observing the internal adaptation process and providing many opportunities for there to be an improvement in that adaptation process. And the means to do that is through engagement in meaningful activity. Why? Because what motivates us more than the things that we want to do? When we are born and we learn how to feed ourselves, we're not thinking to ourselves, I need to have fine motor movement and be able to make thumb opposition and whatnot. We are thinking, that food in my mouth, I need it. This is an important occupation. This is something I want to do. And that need for mastery is what makes us functional, right? So at the heart of this theory is that there is a demand in our environment for mastery. There's an intrinsic desire within the person for that mastery. And together we are motivated to engage in an occupation. And so by engaging in this occupation, the means, we are able to then produce an outcome, occupation. So it's both a means and an outcome, right? That is meaningful and important and valued for us. So that's really the crux. That's the essence of this theory. And I love it because it really stays true to our core philosophy of occupational therapy and using occupation-based, holistic, client-centered look to really treat the whole person. So as I mentioned earlier, don't look at this, please, you guys. It's just another thing to study, another thing that you need to do for the board exam, but really understand it and own it so that you can convey it and practice it and emanate this theory through practice when you become a practitioner, because our patients and clients are looking to us during that moment of profound vulnerability, during that moment of trauma, grief, sudden change, injury, whatever it may be they may be going through, to help them get back to doing whatever it is that they want to do. And we as OT practitioners really do believe that hope glimmers even in the darkest hour, right? And so it is our job and our great privilege to be able to share in that journey, to say whatever the limitation, we can help you adapt better. We can help you still tap into and actualize your highest potential so that you can do the occupation of your choice that is meaningful for you, so that you can live fully. How great is that? That's our job. That's what we do for a living. Help other people tap into their greatest potential. So when you guys are studying theories and frames of reference, it's not just to guide our intervention. Sure, it does that, but really it reminds us of who we are and our philosophy and the ideals that we espouse to, which are just really beautiful and empowering and inspiring. And we have to be able to convey this to the people that we work with, to the patients that are looking to us, and to our the rest of the healthcare team, who always are wondering what it is, what the distinct value is that we bring. We bring a very holistic, client-centered, top-down, occupation-based treatment to treat the whole person, to get them to do what it is that is meaningful to them. Okay, so on that note, I'm gonna stop this video and wish you all a great rest of the week. I hope you can ponder on this more and think really about your own life, to reflect on your own internal adaptation process, and think about what occupations you can engage in today to help you improve your own adaptive process so that you can thrive and perform more effectively and efficiently and in a more fulfilling way in the things that you want to do. All right? Till next time, take good care, and I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.